and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. The show where we talk about all the crazy stupid things that people do in marketing and how you cannot do the crazy stupid things, but can do meaningful, impactful, all the other good things that we want to do, not crazy and stupid. But in order for us to not do crazy stupid things, we have to understand the foundations of the things that we are talking about. And so in marketing, we can very commonly get stuck on the top level of things. We can get stuck talking about platforms and frequency and recency and a bunch of things the internet is telling you to be concerned about. But if we don't look at the underlying, most foundational pieces of marketing, then inevitably we are going to end up doing something crazy and or stupid. And so the show is all about the foundations that we can focus on, we can ask good questions around that will point us in the direction of what is going to be most meaningful from a marketing perspective. And folks, can we get any more foundational than the topic of authenticity? Because that is what we are talking about today. And if you know me, then you will know that authenticity is very near and dear to my heart. One might say a primary point of my identity. And I have a lovely partner in authenticity who is joining me for the conversation today. And before we get into an introduction of her, let me just remind you all, although most of you won't do it, that we have this lovely chat/comment section that allows you to get into the conversation. So this is not just a conversation for Tracy and Gabriela, but this is a conversation for everybody. Because authenticity, folks, we were talking about this right before we came on air, is a skill. And in order to get good at a skill, you have to practice it. And what better place to practice it on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, talking about authenticity. So if you are joining us live, please feel free to get in the comments, let us know you're here, and ask any questions you have, share any insights you have, experiences, perspectives that will add to the conversation, because that makes it more robust for everyone. All right, well, let's learn a little bit more about our special guest for today, shall we? We have Gabriela Gabor, who is joining us today, who I am very lucky to live close enough to that we can have lunch and coffee in person. And we have all of the most fantastic conversations about authenticity. So we're going to talk about some of those things today, and most importantly, how you can harness them into your marketing efforts. So Gabriela, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and why authenticity has become an area where you really desire to focus?
Thank you very much, Tracy. It's very good to be here. And yes, we talked about when we met for the first time for coffee, and I think we ended up talking about more than 2 hours. And that's when we learned that we have this in common. We are very much passionate about being authentic. And when we get into unveiling this topic, it was interesting to see the perspectives on authenticity. So today, I do have mine. I know you have yours, especially yours from a marketing perspective. So just to introduce myself, I'm Gabriela Gabor, and I'm a personal coach helping professional and executive women, helping them feel their, make their success feel as good as it looks. And it has a lot to do with authenticity. When we say, like, how does it feel? So that's what I am today. That's not what I was like many years ago. So my journey brought me to, like, I'll not start from the beginning, like the very beginning. I'll just start by saying that about 29 years ago, I moved to Canada. So that was one of my bold moves with my family. And my small family, because I do have an extended family still back to Romania. So I'm one of those lucky people that call two places home. So I call Canada in Calgary my home, as well as where I was born and raised, and back in Romania. I have to say that it shaped me. Why it's relevant for today's discussion is very interesting when you are part of the two cultures. It was a journey for me, and I'll get that in a moment. So 29 years ago, I came I'll introduce a little bit of like authenticity bits in here, because one of the things when I came to Canada, I want very much to be Canadian. And I did that. So I learned the language, which I didn't speak when I came. I was ready to do whatever I needed to do, but I was lucky enough to get an engineering job. So that's my background. I have a bachelor in science. And I was lucky to get that first job. At that time, guess what I said? That's my dream job. Well, it lasted for about 3 years when I realized there is a bigger world, and that's the IT world. And the IT just exposed me more. I just found that, especially the manufacturing engineering field I was in, was a little bit, I felt it started to be narrow and constrictive for me. So it was like, oh, there is a bigger world out there. And IT exposed me to more parts of the business, just not IT. It took me about 3 years, and I made a professional move into IT. And then at that time, I think on the theme of the world is bigger, I decided to go for the MBA. And at that time, why it's relevant, there is a specific paper that I had on the MBA, and the course was negotiation skills. And that negotiation course, it was focusing on international negotiations and opening up understanding the culture. So if you wanted to negotiate in another culture, and we are global, a very much global, the business is global. So it was a very good course. But the most interesting thing is that I had to do, so it was we had to assess culture, the culture of the company, the culture of a country. And then we had to assess our own culture, like personal culture. So there are frameworks. And at that time I said, I do have a background. I come from another country. I came here. So they say, well, in that case, just see which one you align more with. So interestingly enough, that made me think about like, who is Gabriela this time? So they could be at that time. And then it was still this question. So when I've done that paper and assessing my own culture, it was a framework on about 9 dimensions. And I found that anything to do with personal, I was more aligning with the Romanian culture, and everything that had to do with professional life, I was more aligning with the Canadian culture. Now I'll stop here, because before I continue, I want to make sure that we are still on.
Yes, we are. We're having a little bit of connectivity issue, but we can hear you the whole time. Okay. So it should be good. Okay. Last so week I had no video at all.
Okay, so it could be worse.
It could be much worse.
Okay, it's good that you are still listening. So that was. So you heard about the part with the paper, and when I've done that, I learned that I was aligning with both. So on the person, like more the dimensions that were assessing the personal life, I was more aligning with the Romanian culture. On the professional life, I was more aligned with the Canadian culture. So that was really, that made me think. And then at that time, I said, you know what, why do I have that? I'll just choose that. And why is that important? Because it's a very first step when now I do have the language and the awareness. At that time, I didn't know I was on my path to find my authentic, authentic me. Yeah, so that was the MBA part. And then I got into management in IT, decided that I want to see not only like how many parts of the business there are, but there are different industries. So IT gave me that ticket. I became a consultant in IT for years. And during that time, Lots of opportunities, challenges on the personal work, but on the professional level, but also personally. I worked my challenge. You know how it is be careful what you wish for because you might get it. So my take on every time I went to a company, I say, give me any project, any team, and I'll make it, which means that I had to authentically adapt to any situation, any team. So working with multiple with people, I found through that journey that I do enjoy working and mentoring and coaching people. At the same time, on the personal side, I was going through a divorce after 19 years of marriage, and it was a big milestone. So I can tell you is one of the things, if you want to see how authentic you are, definitely that is a milestone that will put you on that path. And I have to say that at that time, the feeling I felt that I didn't know who I am. So I embarked in this journey, and I started taking courses and all kinds of self-development courses. And originally was to help me understand me. And then combined with what I was experiencing at work, I realized I do have actually a passion to work with people. So recently I decided to be a solopreneur in that environment. So that brings me when I have to say the long-lasting passions are, there is a teaching also. I like the teaching part. So speaking about authenticity, I like to know why things are like that. And I believe we have that in common, Tracy. We are challenging, like not challenging in a good way when you say who can ask, like asking the good questions. And I think that will, learning how to ask good questions definitely is impacting the quality of our life. Mm-hmm. So that my style, like part of, again, authenticity, I love a lot to the teaching part as well as the coaching, because to me, when I get into coaching, I really want people to be informed and like just to get the context, the background. To me, it enhances that experience, because I just the way I learn, it was learning why certain things, why would you do that, why would you make those choices. It helped me. Like, to me, it's just richer. I know it's a richer experience. I know some people like it simple, which I agree with that. But talk to authenticity. That's how I am. So I'm following that. I like asking questions, and I like the multi layers on any topic. And that's when, and I know we connected a lot. That's why our discussions were so good, because it was like question after question. And then like I'm just seeing how much depth and layers you can uncover. So I hope that I said my story, and with some connection on with the authenticity, which is the topic of the day. So I'll stop now, because I know it's a lot, and I know you made some notes. So would you like me to ask me any questions now?
I did make notes because this is what I do. This is something authentic for me. Before we go to that, I just want to recognize that Coach Pete is joining us. So thank you for getting into the conversation, Coach Pete. I know you also have your own experience with authenticity. So if you would care to share that or any of your insights or perspectives, we would love to hear them as well as anybody else who might be hiding behind the scenes, not in the chat yet. Okay, so Gabriela, quite a few times in your story, you mentioned the word journey. And I think this is something that there's maybe a misunderstanding about when it comes to authenticity, because I think there can be a little bit of confusion that authenticity, because it's about you being you, stays consistent for your entire existence. And it's something that I speak very heavily about, because like, as we learn new things, as we grow, we meet new people, new things happen in our lives, we actually evolve as people. And so what it looks like for us to be authentic in any given moment might not necessarily be consistent. And there is this overarching principle in marketing about consistency and how important it is. And so Can you talk a little bit about your journey and the things that you saw that changed and evolved, but also the things that you might have identified that did stay consistent?
Okay, that's I could definitely talk about the first part. Well, maybe the second part as well. So I'll start. You know how any story has a start, and I'll talk about the journey. I don't know where it didn't come from, but I think when I was 14, somehow, I don't know where that thought came from, is that I start interviewing people around me that were 30. So in my mind, my 14-year-old mind was that I'm not going to make mistakes. I'm just going to ask all those people, and 30 feel like a very wise age. When you are 14. So I will interview people and say, like, interview in a sense, I'll go to a party or to a visit, and it's like, okay, so everybody who was around 30 or over, it was like, what mistakes did you do in your life? Like, what you are proud, like what decisions you made that you are proud of and they work, what decisions you make and it didn't work and that they were mistakes. In my mind was that if I do that, I learn all the mistakes that people make in life, and I'll just live blissfully. I even said that by the time I want to make all my mistakes by the time I'm 30, and after that is just going to be a breeze. So what has not changed since then is that yes, there is I know that I'm still very much passionate about wisdom. On that note, just a small parenthesis, I found myself that I'm a philosopher at heart. And if you know the etymology of philosopher, it means lover for wisdom. So there is something, talk about what doesn't have changed. There is this wisdom, which it's kind of a vein of truth for me that stay with me. So fast forward, what did change is, of course, 30 does not mean that you learn everything. And as a matter of fact, I could say that in my early 30s, I had my life crisis. And I realized, like, after the fact, that is like, oh, where I thought I'm going to be at 30, I'm not there at all. It doesn't feel like I thought. So between 30 and 40, that's when I realized, like, as I was getting close to 40s, it was like, oh, like wisdom is not a destination, is a path. So voila, that has changed. So my 14-year-old view that things are fixed and like you just get it right, it did not pan out like that. And I think that was one of the biggest aha moments when I realized that wisdom is a path, not a destination. Yeah, so those are the things that Tracy. And since then, I have to say that life just got better and better. Before, I think I tend to have this seriousness about me, like this is what people say, that's how they perceive me. And it's okay. So it's part of my personality. I learned to accept that, because that's part of the authenticity, by the way. It's accepting all parts of you. Nobody's perfect, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I learned the difference on aiming in your life for excellence, not perfection. Perfection, basically, it's utopia. It doesn't exist, perfection. Right. So to me, that combined on the fact that wisdom comes, and it's, as you say, it's an evolution. Life, it's evolving. And I learned that life is just much more joyful, because you don't have to know anything. You don't have to get everything right. And the path is basically unveiling for you. And once I got that, and I realized life is a path, and then everything, it's a journey. My focus shifted, and I forgive myself for wanting to be right, and wanting to get all these like the right way. So yeah, I'll stop here. Did I answer your questions about the journey? And
yes, absolutely. And I love how you talked about the unveiling of the path, because I think a lot of times our young brains, whether you consider that a 14-year-old brain or even a 30-year-old brain, assume that we should know, right? Like we should know, and we have all these like maps in our lives that show us how to get places, but we don't have a pre-created map that shows us where we're going. Our job is to unveil that as we go. And I think this is a very interesting perspective, specifically looking at the concept of authenticity in a business perspective. One, as an individual career perspective, assuming that we have like a linear career trajectory, which I don't think any of us have had. We don't have that. You might have the steps of go to school, go to university, get a job. But you don't even have to do them in that order, right? You can get a job, you can go to university after, you cannot go to university. You can run a $1 billion business and not have done any of those things, right? So we know there's multiple paths, but yet somehow we also assume that there's a very linear path for us. And if I just do this, and then I just do this, and then I just do this, that it will manifest in stage 3. And from a authenticity perspective, this is not true, and nor from a marketing perspective is this true, and nor would I even say from an entire business development perspective is this true. Like, did Walt Disney know that Disney was going to be today what it was when he opened Disneyland? I'm pretty sure he didn't. But there was in the Disney example a desire for creating magic. And in your example, there was a desire for wisdom. And while your desire for wisdom when you were 14 may have been a little misguided in assuming I could not make any mistakes, that'd be wonderful, wouldn't it? If we could just figure it out and nobody would have to make any of the mistakes. Except, again, life is not like that. Your desire for wisdom remains. So there is a consistency in that from who is Gabriela. But I also think that is something that may be like consistent for you in your journey, but it might be something that someone else adds later in their journey. And it's not that you either are a wisdom person or a not wisdom person. Authenticity for me is one of those things where, like, when I was 13, I was like, why is everybody choosing one thing to be? Everybody's choosing to be like a nerd or a jock or a this or a that. And like, why is that? So I'm just going to not do that and see how that goes. And it's funny because for many years, people would say the word rebel to me. And I was like, no, I'm not a rebel. I do not identify as a rebel. I just identify as myself. And whether that breaks the status quo, that's a different thing. I'm not doing it to break the status quo. I'm doing it to be myself. There's like kind of those core ways of being that exist throughout our entire journey. Although those ways of being may manifest differently, they might show up differently, they might look differently at different parts of our life, they still have that kind of core way of being that exists. And I think from a business perspective, this is a very important thing to take into consideration before we think about. So marketing is about like shouting our message to the world and being like, this is who we are and this is what we do. Come and get it, right? And in your experience, Gabriela, how important is it for someone to have that real sense of this is who I am before they can even possibly gain true confidence in shouting who they are to the world?
Okay, that's an interesting take. So first of all, I'll just, I want to clarify something for the audience, especially for younger people, how like one of the, if I were to take out of the dictionary, I would take out the mistake, the word mistake. But what helped me is that now when I say mistake, it's quotation mark, because I heard somebody saying, and it resonated with me, when they say that think about a movie, like if you like your favorite movie. If you look at that, and it's the perfect movie, but behind that perfect take, there were like hundreds of mistakes. So that helped me a lot is that when I say mistake, it's a missed take, which means that, especially when I'm doing for the first time something, like, what are the chances I'm going to do like perfect, oh, and perfectly, but what are the chances that I'm doing that the way I wanted? Like, which movie was cut in like each scene in one cut? They were like,
Right.
I think probably the minimum were like 5, 6, 10, whatever. So that's the part. And the reason I want to bring that to the younger audience, because it's one of the most destructive words. If you think about like failure, like failing, when I hear about like young people, I'm a failure because I didn't finish university. It's not about that. Like, fail, somebody was saying like it's first attempt at learning. I think they tried to do like an acronym, because it's that it's a process. Life is a process. A job is a process. Everything. So, and it's that evolution. So the key words that we have to do is because it's a journey, it's a process. So that I really want to make sure that people get it and don't kill yourself. Like, we fit an image, and that's very important in the marketing like I mentioned before, how I'm part of the two cultures. It's interesting when I go back to Romania, I see the Canadian part of me, and then I kind of know where some beliefs of mine come. So it's that like the culture, society, it depends so much on you. And as you said, Tracy, in your story is like you are a rebel. What does it mean, rebel? That like this system, and I'll just say it, I don't go, I will just say a very simple system. It's not like it's not conducive for creativity. It's conducive for just do what other that and just follow, and it's almost like mimicking and copying. And I think the biggest trade, so rebel is just a label that society puts or based on like you are not the same with everyone else, which is, I would love talk about authenticity. Be who you are. Like, that's where the like it's very important. Now, so that's about mistakes, and I just want to make sure, just to give people some like, just makes mistakes. Like this is exactly that the problem with when, if you are getting the wrong idea that it has to be perfect, then you can go and guess what? It's never gonna be perfect. So the 80-20 rule, it's true. Like, just make it until it's good enough. Like in my case, I have an internal system. Like, I'm looking and it's like, and I'm going to ask slowly your question, is that, is it true for me right now? Is it good based on who I am, what I have, and what I know right now? And then it's, yeah, if it's good, I'll do it. And I will assume the not the consequences, because consequences means that you do something like intentionally bad. No, it's a decision. And then I'm making a decision. And then when you say shout out your message. So in my case, what I learned is that there is the best of two worlds. If you jump the gun and you go too early and shout out a message, you may look like a fool in others, because even in your eyes is like, who was like, what was I thinking like 3 months ago? So in my case, it was important to know who I am and what I stand for. So that is core ways of being. Like I'm teaching a course this week, and it's all about meaning, purpose, mindset, and authenticity, leading to authenticity. But is that so? There is a progression. So something that we learn about, like I was just teaching the last week on purpose, is how to have a VIP life, and VIP stands for values, inspiration, and passions. So coming back to the core ways of being, you have to yeah, have and should they are bad words. Well, that I'm saying, you will save yourself a lot of pain if you put some time into assessing yourself, who you are inside in terms of values. Now, like anything else in life, they will evolve, but it's a very good foundation that gives you. So when you shout out your message, it will be aligned. And then if you did your homework and you know, like you said, these are the values I stand for, this, so they are basically fundamentals, then in time is very like, you have to test, because yeah, it's a test in a way. This is who I am now. And then the intention is I want to help people. So you'll attract a certain audience, certain people, and it's a learning, it's a two-way learning. One thing that I said in coaching, like I'm not like, I don't have all the answers in this world. As a matter of fact, as a coach, you actually you help people. The answers, we all have the answers in us, because it's our own truth, it's our own self. And as a coach, I'm just creating that space and guide the person to find to that come that outside of them. So that's when you say that. So too soon, it might be if you jump the gun, and if you didn't do a little bit of sitting down and then do some introspection, you might jump, and it might be looking like you might jump like from one to another very quickly, and it will be in eyes of the other people. So I'm a proponent, and I'm speaking from my own journey. I found how when I got challenged to say that out loud, is like, I don't feel confident. I wasn't at my 80%. Now, the more I get confidence in my message, in my what I stand for, and who my ideal client is, I can shout out my message. And suddenly it's like they were all in there. So the core messages haven't changed. I learned more about like how to say, because marketing is about an authenticity, is exactly what you said. You have to be your true self. At the same time, marketing serves a purpose, which is attracting your ideal clients, because otherwise, who do you serve? No, if they don't come to you. So you cannot ignore the functional part of marketing. So that's what I'm saying, and that's why, like I can tell you what it will be, the internal work, and to meet somebody who knows marketing, and how can you actually efficiently and shout that message, not for the sake of shouting, but the sake of and make an impact. So I'll stop here. Do you have more questions about that, or?
Oh, yes. I have all of the questions all of the time. This is what the show is all about. Okay. So I think that I just want to take a moment to reframe some of the things that you said from a personal perspective, from a business perspective, because while I think there is inherently a fear of quote unquote going to market with the quote unquote wrong message. From a personal point of view, if you are invested in testing and trying, then that might be something that you might do. And from a business perspective, it might be something you don't do because you're worried about damaging your brand, or you could be worried about a whole swag of things. Now, here's the interesting thing about saying things. Very rarely is something that you say, especially if you're in the beginning part of your journey and you're just like trying stuff on and trying to figure it out, is it going to be particularly meaningful for anybody? Because you don't even know it's particularly meaningful for you yet. And until that moment it comes out of your mouth, you can't really know if that is it. And one of the things I found really interesting, I was in a coaching program once, and I was in a room with a bunch of other participants giving their pitch, right? And I could see the disconnect in them between their face and their energy and the words that they were saying. And I remember the coach of this program. Now, this is when I realized that her and I were not aligned in how we believed in doing things. She was telling this person how it was like so clear and like perfectly targeted at her target audience and all of these things. And I was like, that might be true, but if you don't get excited for the words to come out of your mouth, you're probably not going to quote unquote shout them to the world. And so from a marketing perspective, this is where people hit a lot of roadblocks because we write things like an I help statement and we put it on our LinkedIn tagline, and then we think it says everything it needs to say, but it's so clinical that it doesn't actually create an emotion in a person. And so it might be clear, it might be concise, it might be all of those things. It also doesn't evoke an emotion. And when we're talking about when we get to the point, and it is a journey, it's an adventure, I like to call it, to go from one point to the other. But when you are just out in the world, authentic storytelling, there is an energy that is associated with that is not associated with scripting. And from a marketing perspective, this is the interesting thing to look at, because if the area you live in, the safety zone, is based on everything being perfectly scripted, and you give that same script to every single person, regardless of who they are or where they are or what have you, then I would encourage you to continue looking, because I wouldn't say that that is the authenticity zone. As another example, I have a great friend who runs a passion-based program, and coming out of the program, what you have are these things she calls your passion drivers. And when I talk to a lot of people who have done the program, they have their passion drivers written down and they read them off. And in my experience of the program, when I voiced them, they were like so central to who I am as a person that I do not have them written anywhere, but I feel them in my body. So I can recite them very easily to you, but they're not written anywhere. And so these are the types of things that I think are great opportunities for us to like keep diving into our authenticity, is that if we feel we have these things written down and they're pretty good, right? They feel pretty good. They're not a lie. They're definitely not a lie. There's truth to them, but they don't feel like you get excited talking about it. It doesn't feel like you want to shout them to the world. Then and they might not even be wrong, but there might be like a framing for them that you're missing. That is the thing that makes them unique to you. And from a marketing perspective, when we get down to that juicy goodness, the thing that is like legitimately unique about you, and Tracy can talk about authenticity, and Gabriela can talk about authenticity, and we've also had Betty Chan on the show talking about authenticity, but we all talk about it in a different way because it means different things. It manifests in different ways for each of us. When we can tap into those things, that's when we really have the secret sauce from a marketing perspective of how we can share what these things are. And then all of a sudden we become more than a life coach. We become more than a marketing advisor. We become more than a B2B software company. We become the one and only of that. And if you're looking for the one and only to help you, then you probably want to come and talk to this person. Before I ask my next question, I'm going to go to Pete's comment here. He says, I'm hearing that it helps to use similar assessment tools for creating effective marketing communications for personal introspection and growth as well. In fact, it's likely best to start with the personal inner search can lead to authenticity in both. And this, I think, is a very important point, Pete, and I'm really glad you brought it up, because in the authenticity journey, the access points to authenticity are different for all of us. And so I think most of you have heard, if you've watched this show before, I talk about this moment where I was dusting my shelves and my brain thought the sentence, I think I'm being my authentic self like 5% of the time. What about dusting a shelf brought that thought on for me? I don't know. It wasn't about the shelf. It was about a whole bunch of things that added up to that moment that said, okay, Tracy, time for you to go on your authenticity journey. And this is the version that you get because you're Tracy. But the access points for everybody are different. So it might be a personal assessment tool you have to do for work. I've heard a lot of people get access points through things like Clifton Strengths. You'll hear a lot of people talking about human design, or I like to joke and talk about the Harry Potter sorting hat. But there's it could be a conversation with Gabriela. It could be a conversation with Pete. It could be a conversation with your neighbor. It could be a conversation with a kid, actually. I bet you there's lots of access points through conversations with kids. But there's no one entry point. Like it's not that everybody who's been on an authenticity journey had this one exact same experience and then went on their journey. It's not a thing. So I think the point in that is that there's opportunity for the authenticity journey to be turned on wherever you want. So just don't, something you learn at work from a career authenticity perspective can work in your personal life. Something you learn in your personal life can work in your career. All of these things are like the human experience, and they are holistic. We are not one person at work and one person at home, as much as we would like to pretend that we are. All of that is intermingled in our experience, and the cross the word that's coming to me is cross-contamination, but that sounds like it's a bad thing, but it's a good thing in this scenario. The cross-contamination of authenticity in the different parts of our lives can come from anywhere. So, Gabriela, do you have anything additional you'd like to add on to that point before I ask one final question?
So Tracy, I don't know how it's for the audience. There is a lot of like pausing, and so the sound, like I had to actually stitch the part that I was listening. So many times you froze, and then I couldn't hear the parts, but I think I was able to stitch them. So all the above, I'll just like to answer why dusting brought that. It's actually that the aha moments that we get, they are usually when we think that the answers are in mind. They are not. It's actually the subconscious. That's where the answers are, the truth and the answers. And it's actually quite like, if you hear about these stories, is like when you take a bath, when you take a shower, when you brush my teeth. For me, brushing my teeth helps a lot. Like I have such aha moments in a way when I brush my teeth, that is like I'm having like suddenly I have the answer. So just to know that is coming from subconscious. If you want consistent results, I would say the number one for me where I get my my inspiration from is walking in nature. So there is a wonder, and they say that there is a study saying that in the first 20, like once you walk in 20 minutes in nature, you actually go get into the alpha wave of the brain, and that's what basically that's the state where meditators get in, and it's your conscience, like your conscious mind is still there, but you are actually accessing the subconscious. So that's what happened. So in your case, by dusting, your mind was like relaxed. So by being the mind relaxed, nothing was blocking. So those are there are certain like things that we just do and don't think about it. That's where actually a lot of creativity can happen in those moments. So that's about like why dusting, because I love this. As I said, I have many other examples. Now, if I were to add something else, and Pete was saying the same, like to me, based on what I know now, not the now version, not the 14 years old version, is that that inner work needs to be done. Like if you want any authenticity, because as you said, it could be rebellious, like doing something different just for the sake of it. It doesn't mean you're authentic. You may be a rebel without a cause, at most. So the inner work to do that, and then go into, and then really, because authenticity is be who you are. But the first question is, so who are you? And I actually can challenge anyone: is that really you, or is the family that impose those on you? Maybe the culture. Like, are those really your ideas, or like that's what you stand for? So that's what I like to add. I was saying before that if you jump the gun, then you just look like somebody who is just jumping here and there, versus take some time and not froze and don't go into over analyzing, because that's the other end of the spectrum. So you have to find that balance, and you said it at some point, and it's very true from all the research that I've done and I experience on myself, is that there is the true intelligence is inside the body. So the way you say you feel it. So many people think that is the brain is powerful. The brain is a tool, but there is intelligence beyond that. And the it says that the subconscious, which is 90% of where our ideas come from, that's when you access it from when the mind is it's quiet. So a lot of aha moments you will see in meditation, for example, like the effects of the benefits of meditation are unbelievable. So those are the things. What I'm trying to say is that find a balance. I'm all about the balance. It's one of my favorite words. And I heard somewhere saying that a virtue, like to live a virtuous life based on virtues, is the less lack of that is what's the opposite of the virtues? Oh,
Vices.
I just have it escapes me. Vices. Thank you. So virtues are in the middle of an imaginary, because it's too not enough. It's a vice, and too much is a vice. The virtue is finding that blend. And I was almost going to say perfect blend, but perfect is it. As I said, perfection doesn't exist. So you have to find that. So very good point when you say when you feel it in your body, that's where you know you're like when you feel like somebody was talking to me and she cries and said, don't judge me because of that. And I said, no, that's true. Like the fact that you have you almost feel crying or you have goosebumps, that's when it's true. Like if you want to know that, when we say like the core of being, or that vein that stays with you, that's how it's manifesting. So your body is actually saying you are on the path. Okay, so that's the only point I was going to make, like making sure that you do the inner work, because otherwise, and find who you are, like really, and test it with your own body and how you feel. And then the other one is, yeah, be courageous to test, like when you don't have the perfection, when it's good enough for with what you have and what you know in that moment, just do it. You need to like from actions, just by doing, like not test like just randomly quickly, but test when you've done the work and see how it works. And then remember, there is no mistake. Just look at what it worked, what it didn't, because that's how we evolve. So when you say like the interesting thing, we don't just become wise, we are wiser and wiser and wiser. And to do that, I'll end with what you started when you say authenticity is a skill. I'm saying that is a skill, and I'm teaching a process on how to basically shape and cultivate that skill. And to your point, just practice it, and then until it becomes your nature.
Hmm. Well, and I love that because I think a lot of times when we practice, we also realize that that's maybe not the direction we want to go. And from a marketing perspective, I think a great place to test this is on like a LinkedIn company page, right? And it's about section, right? Like play with it, have fun with it, change it, evolve it, right? Like one, most people are not going to read it. So it's just kind of like a playground for you to practice, and it's made to be updated. So go to the playground. Like I have a 6-year-old and like that kid wants to go to the same playground all the time. It's not, doesn't get boring for him. Come back to the authenticity playground and play, right? Try stuff. Say, this is one of the things I love to do at No Pitch Networking is have people say what they're all about. And we had one participant for a very long time who every single time she came gave a different answer. And I was such a big fan of that because she was trying on, like, how do I want to describe myself today? And sometimes you don't know until you say it. So I think it's great to keep coming back and find a gym where you like to practice. Okay, I do want to ask one more question because Gabriela, earlier on in the conversation, you said something about asking good questions. And I wanted to get your authenticity angle on this because I think very commonly, especially from maybe a work perspective, people now are going to ChatGPT and asking ChatGPT, what are the good questions? So when you say asking good questions from this practice of self-awareness and learning about our authenticity, what defines a good question?
Oh, I was going to like the moment I lit up because I thought you were going to ask about ChatGPT, and I definitely have an opinion about that based on like I use it as a playground. I think it's I used to say like semi-joking, like when I joke, is like there. Remember, as I said, I've done many projects, and it's the newness when you start. And I'm known about asking. And I remember some people saying, "Oh, that's a good question." You know how I knew it was a good question? They didn't know the answer. So I would say, like for today, I would say I would say it's a good question. A good question is the one that makes, like, if you ask a question and you know the answer, you haven't learned anything. So good question is the ones that stay with you, they make you think. They make you think. Like it was like, okay, what was that about? Like I haven't thought about it from that angle. So that's why I love interaction and collaboration with people, because in my mind I found that you can get a lot of, like, you are into your own mind. But when you talk to somebody, and that is when you ask questions, that's the one when you and again, you might not have the answers, and people show you a different perspective, and you have a better chance to look at the topic more holistically by asking questions that you didn't even think. And then short is that is a good question in general. I would say that the one that it doesn't have an answer, it means that it will make you think and ask more questions to get that. If you were to refer to ChatGPT, what I found is that it's very interesting when you talk to a real person and they tell, like, you probe with a question, they come up with a different perspective, and it's a dialogue. It's a different dialogue with ChatGPT. It's interesting. I do talk very nicely with ChatGPT. I always say hi, thank you, and then so on. And it answers back. But I found that I actually have to make an effort to ask with questions. And I've noticed, and how you know if you ask the right question is that you will see the answer and it's like, I didn't mean that. Like, I didn't want to ask that question. So another angle of what is a good question, if you pose it such way that you get a clear answer. Like if it's a question that you want an answer, not a philosophical or a reflective, when you want to know more, I would say that's another good question, when is like, oh, by the feedback is I didn't, that's not what I meant. So that's what I found about ChatGPT, because it tested me and it was like, no, I want something else. So it will make me think in a different way. And in this case, like, it does actually talk to you back. Is that it will ask you, this is what you wanted? And it's like, no, I meant this. So yeah, I would say those are the two definitions, like the philosophical question, those that don't have an answer, and it will inspire you to ask more questions. And from a chat GPT or even others, like, come to you and see if it's even aligned or it is like completely out of alignment with what you actually intended to ask.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's making me think of, like, just a couple of weeks ago, I had my son do eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And I can't remember what he was trying to choose between. But he ended up landing on the thing he didn't want. And I said to him, that's good, because it helped the process,
Yeah.
helped you figure out what you want and what you didn't want. It wasn't actually that you have to land on the thing that you want. The process helps you figure it out. And that's what I'm hearing in this questioning, is that, because I've done that with ChatGPT before too. When I like ask it a question, it gives me a response, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't the question I meant to ask. How can I reframe this so I can get the answer that I am looking for, or in the right arena? And I'm with you too, because I have a really great friend. We have these, like, we are in different industries and different countries, but we have these conversations where, like, they pretty much are just based on us asking each other questions. And one of the things I love about them is at the end of every single one, he is like, you made me think today. And I was like, this is what I think a good question does, is it makes you think. You don't necessarily have the answer, but it makes us think. And in a society where we are continually more programmed towards ease of deliverability, and I can just one click and Amazon can send it to my house, I believe we're losing that skill of creativity and being able, even from an ego perspective, to have someone ask us a question that we don't know the answer to, and allow that to prompt a journey towards wisdom that we weren't on before. And from a marketing perspective, again, like, the marketing ends up many times being very programmatic, right? It's like the goal always is just to, like, systematize it to the point where, like, we don't really have to think about it anymore. It just, like, ticks. But if we don't ask good questions up to that point to actually create things that can be systematized and scaled to that perspective, we won't have a foundation on which to create. And if we don't continue to ask questions, we run into scenarios like the COVID-19 pandemic, where coming out of that, everyone was like, oh, none of our marketing works anymore, because people changed. That scenario changed people, which means it changed your consumers. It actually changed your business as well. And so if we don't have the permission baked into our marketing programs to have that evolve as we evolve and as our customers evolve, and therefore as the conversation between us evolves, then we don't, like, we could systematize that all day, but at some point, and that point is unpredictable, it will come to a point where it doesn't work, and then we don't have anything. So personally, that feels very risky to me. And I am more of a proponent of doing what we can from an insurance perspective to ensure that we are protecting ourselves against the ever-evolving humans that make up both sides of our marketing and sales equations. And like you said, Gabriela, you talked very profoundly about how this is an inside project, right? We have to look inside. The answers are not found outside of us. And if we look at the percentage of our day that we spend, I'm going to specifically call on people let's look at the amount of time we spend doing marketing activities and the amount of time we spend doing deep dives into who we are. I will guarantee you the global average is spending more time on marketing efforts. And so what if we took this opportunity to flip that and said, let's spend maybe just a little bit more time on the self-awareness, authenticity deep dive, so that we have something meaningful that can manifest from a marketing perspective, instead of something that is just going out to the world to say that you posted on social media today. And with that, we are at time for today. So I know, Gabriela, and literally we have talked about this for hours before, but we're going to leave it there for today. Gabriela, where is the best place for people to find you if they are interested in learning more about you and what you do?
So, sorry, you froze again. The best one, like the easiest, is in LinkedIn. I have a presence there. It's Gabriela Gabor. If you Google, and you'll find it's probably one of the Gabriela Gabor Calgary. I think that will get you to the fastest result. And my website is Gabriela Gabor, one word, .weebly, WEEBLY .com. So that's my website. But the best place is probably LinkedIn, because I do have a link to the website. So definitely there you can find me and learn more. You can get to the website and learn more. Right now I do have a course, but it's in progress, so I'm not taking more students. But if you want to work with me in the future, definitely that's the start point, I'd say.
Yes, and
can I just say that like this? Yeah. So when you said one thing is because I'm doing this journey and I'm trying to find the balance. So as you said, and I'm finding this because I'm working with like marketing specialists, like I'm hearing different opinions. And as you said, like what I found, like people say, "Oh, just be smart and automate and do that." If you automate too soon without knowing like what your voice and what your authentic is, I think it looks mechanical. So I think that's one talk about like virtues in the middle. Like if you don't do enough work and put the fundamentals, it could be mechanical. And to your point, like if you did the work and you automate, you have these automatic things, but things change in the environment. You need to be on top of that, because otherwise it looks stale. Like if you like, this is not like the answer is as good as who you are at that time and what the environment is. So those are the things, finding the right balance to know who you are and not work smart, automate, but to the point that you are still there. Like it's not too soon, and then not just live on like it just works because it's systemized. So I think that's a good balance for somebody to, from a marketing perspective, how to approach it.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because like, let's be productive.
In my opinion.
Let's automate what we can. But that's also keep ourselves in it. Right? Let's not automate ourselves out of it from a way of being and from a personality and from an authenticity point of view. I love that, Gabriela. And for those of you who are looking to connect with Gabriela, she is tagged in the post associated with this show on LinkedIn. So you can just click on her name and it will take you to her profile, and feel free to connect and tell her that you saw her on the show, so she has some background of how you're coming in, and have a conversation. Because this conversation, just like every can of worms we open on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, isn't a conversation where you come in, you listen to Tracy and Gabriela talk for an hour about authenticity, and then all of a sudden you have everything you need to know about your own authenticity. Unfortunately, authenticity does not work that way, nor do most of the foundational things in marketing. So don't let this be the last conversation that you are in about this topic. Let it be the first or the next of many, so that if your goal is to be more authentic with your marketing, that this is a step in your journey, but it is not the final wisdom destination, because we totally debunked that today. With that, everybody, thank you so much. Gabrielle, thank you so much for sharing so much of your insight. Thank you to Pete and iCare, who are in the chats. Thank you for joining us live. Thank you for everyone else joining us live who did not come in the chats. Yep, I see you people. Get in the chats. We want to hear your voice. This is your opportunity to practice your authenticity too. So if you didn't get to practice today, come next week and start practicing then. And with that, everybody, until next time, permission to do you.